and welcome back to Sports Scene on WLCS TV. Of course, we took some time off for the holidays, but now we're glad to be back with you. My guest this week is one of the premier coaches in the Lorain County area. Now, unless you're an aficionado of wrestling, you really wouldn't know who he is, but he's Dan Ternes, the head wrestling coach over at Southview High School, and he's brought a couple of wrestlers along with him, Juggy Franklin, and a little bit later on we'll be talking to Orlando Mendoza. Maybe we'll find out a little bit later where Juggy got that nickname from. But anyway, we'll start off with Dan Ternes. Dan, welcome to Sports Scene.
Thank you.
Your 21st year as the head wrestling coach over at Southview High School, and obviously one of the premier programs not only in Northeast Ohio, but perhaps in the state. Talk a little bit about how you've built this program to the prominence it's become.
Boy, it started back in 1969, and it was that was the first year Southview opened. And, you know, we had kids come out to wrestling and didn't even know what a mat was. It was really kind of comical at the time. I was talking to parents to try to get their boys out to wrestle, and they thought it was big-time wrestling back then. So now you can see where we've come from one of the top teams in the state from way back to people thought it was big-time wrestling. And it just kind of grew, and we had an outstanding junior high program. We had Butch Perkins that started our junior high program. Since then, we've added Pepe Ruiz at the junior high level at Whittier. We have only one junior high feed in Southview. And I think that is the key to our success was our junior high program, or is our program right now, because of how tough they are. They have lost only a few matches through the years. And of course, Pepe keeps pumping them to me, and I just advance them from there.
Dan, talk a little bit about what it takes to keep it where it's at. Once you establish it, maybe the hardest part is to keep it at that prominence.
You know, it's difficult. It really is. Everybody looks to Southview. They expect the wrestlers to win. I mean, and I think even when we get the boys at wrestling time, they expect to win. It's at that point now when they come out to wrestling, they know they're going to win. It's the difference between saying, gee, I'm not sure if I'm going to win or lose, but they know when they come into our wrestling program, we're giving the top information, the top moves to use, and our whole program revolves around past wrestlers that have wrestled for me. They're coming back into our program constantly, helping us. And some of the kids that are in college, they come back during Christmas break and they help us. So they're getting all top techniques now. And, you know, I think the kids expect to win at that level too.
Dan, talk a little bit about what it takes to be a successful wrestler as far as a high school athlete is concerned.
Boy, you know, times have changed, and people say kids have changed, and they have in a small way, but yet the dedication still has to be there to be a wrestler. The dedication as far as dieting. Of course, we have gone away from a little bit of dieting. Years ago, they used to diet a lot. Nowadays, we try to keep them right at their weight that they're at, maybe lose 4 or 5 pounds. The dedication as far as the extra running nights. I have my young men are running nights on their own. As the season progresses, we run in the morning. I have them come in for a morning practice. We do steps together. Everything involved, plus doing your schoolwork, staying on top of your schoolwork, and you know those things just all revolve around stay tough.
Dan, it's not really a glamour sport per se, like football or basketball, and it's a lot of individual effort, as you point out. Is it tough to get a young man to come out and wrestle with all that goes into it?
Oh, it's very difficult now. I mean, before I used to have 100 kids out. Now we're down to about 40, 45 kids. And with people adding, or young men going on and getting jobs and so forth, and without that glamour there. Of course, you know, with my varsity, they do get a lot of glamour. Everybody in the state of Ohio knows of Southview wrestling. Everybody knows when they're stepping on the mat with the red, white, and blue, hey, there is a kid that is going to excel and is going to be an outstanding person.
So what do you sell your kids on when you tell them to come out for wrestling?
Probably fun. We have a lot of fun in our program. I mean, it's not all hard work. I mean, sure, they bust their fannies on it, but yet it's a lot of fun in our program. I have my brother as an assistant, and then I have other kids coming back, the other ones that come back, and they're constantly adding things to it.
Do you find that a lot of kids that really don't want to come out for wrestling once you explain to them all the hard work that goes into it?
Well, I find people come out for wrestling now, they think it's easy because they want to be part of the winning tradition. And they come out for a week or so, and then all of a sudden they say, this is too much. or they come out and they'll wrestle, and all of a sudden it gets up to match time where they have to step out on the mat in front of a crowd. And then it says, oh no, not me. I'm not ready for that. They don't want to have the, sure they want the success of winning, but as soon as if they think about losing in front of a crowd, then they back off and they want out.
Dan, you mentioned the fact that your brothers are going to assist you in coaching the team this year. Of course, you lost one of your assistants, Coach McNulty, went over to Elyria High. How has that affected the program?
I hope to think it hasn't affected us a whole lot. I mean, you know, I've added Edgar Cologne to my staff. I've added Eulin Robinson, who was a excuse me, state runner-up last year, and you know, I think it's still at the same level as what we were last year.
Let's talk about some of your personnel. We mentioned the athletes that you've brought over here today to film the show, and we'll talk a little bit to them later on, but some of the other wrestlers you have this year.
I have Lolly Ruiz is probably one of my top wrestlers. He's at 160-pounder. He's a 3-time Letterman for me. This will be his 4th year Letterman for me. He came through my junior high program. As a matter of fact, it's Pepe Ruiz's brother. So he's been involved in wrestling since he's like 4 or 5 years old. I mean, you know, he went through I have a program that a few years ago I ran at Sacred Heart during the summer. He went through that program. We have Chungy Torres at 125. He's only lost 1 match. Matter of fact, he lost this past weekend in California University tournament to a young man that was 115 wins. He was a 2-time state champ from Pennsylvania. That's his only loss for the year. Those are both seniors. And then I have some underclassmen at 112. We have Hiram Carreras. 119 is Carlos Oriano. And then it goes right on. We have predominantly seniors in the upper weights, and then in the light weights and middle weights we have pretty much sophomores.
Dan, I understand you recently got back from a tournament out in California. How'd that go for the Saints?
That was in California University in Pennsylvania.
Oh, excuse me.
It wasn't in California. It was California University of Pennsylvania. It's one of the top tournaments, premier tournaments of the country, and all the teams. We had a team from Maryland there, Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, and all the top schools out of Pennsylvania. And I thought we did fairly well. We placed 5th. We were like a 1.5 out of 4th, and had Juggy or maybe Orlando Mendoza or one of these other ones that were in the semifinals. They got beat in the semifinals, and had they maybe gotten in for 1st and 2nd, we could have probably taken 2nd place in the whole tournament.
That had to be a super experience for your kids, though.
Oh, it was fantastic, because normally we go to the Brunswick Invitational Tournament, which is a very tough tournament in the area in northeastern Ohio. But we decided to take a day or a year off and say, let's expand, go to this tournament. They invited us to it by invitation, and they do go for the top teams in the country. And they gave us free housing and lodging, so it didn't cost us hardly anything to go there. And we had a dormitory for ourselves just for my team. We had the 13 wrestlers, and I took 4 or 5 assistants with us, and we stayed right there. And we had a refrigerator, stove, a microwave, and we cooked all our meals right there. It was like a big family affair, and they had all our bunks right in the bottom of the dormitory, so we stayed there for 3 days.
I would imagine your kids really enjoyed it too.
Oh, they really enjoyed it. You know, it was a nice get-together along with wrestling.
Dan, in some of the areas of the country, wrestling is so big, especially at the high school and collegiate level. What do the coaches and the athletes in our area have to do to match the enthusiasm in other parts of the country?
Well, northeastern Ohio is pretty big as far as the enthusiasm. As you go farther south and west, it kind of drops off. In Pennsylvania, when we went to Pennsylvania, I mean, those crowds there, it was like full house. And, you know, of course, we go into like the Menor district in Cleveland area, and you're talking a packed house there too. Of course, in the state tournament's the same thing. But I don't know, I think that is up to the coaches to really push it and try to get fan support. Now, I think we have a pretty good following. We wrestled Elyria last week, and our host side was filled, and Elyria's side was filled. Of course, that was a natural rivalry between McNulty and myself, and myself and my brother being graduates of Elyria High, we've always taken pride in trying to beat Elyria High.
Dan, let's talk about your background. First of all, before you came to Southview back in '69 as the head wrestling coach, how did you get involved in wrestling in general? Well,
I started in high school, at Elyria High School, my sophomore year. I wrestled 3 years at Elyria High under Frank Fiore, late Frank Fiore. From there, I went on to Bowling Green, wrestled 4 years at Bowling Green. And I got a job back at Elyria High School as an assistant coach. And then when Southview opened up, Frank Fiore was the faculty manager there, and he swayed me to come to Southview. That's where I got started.
When you were out there on the mat as a sophomore and junior in high school, did you think someday you'd want to coach the sport?
Not until my senior year, after I had 2 good years, my junior and senior year in high school. After that, I started to decide what I was going to do, and I originally had planned on being a professional welder, and I had studied vocational welding in high school, and that's what I was going to do. And Fiore got me a grant scholarship to Bowling Green, and I said, well, hey, why not try it? I have nothing to lose. So I went up there and got into education. I enjoyed education. I got into industrial arts field, and I come back, and eventually I'm teaching at Southview, and what do you know, I'm teaching vocational welding. So I was right in my line. I have wrestling, plus I have vocational welding.
Dan, when you talk to a football coach, they say it takes a special personality to be a quarterback or a running back, or if you talk to a baseball manager, it takes a special person to be a pitcher. Does it take a special type of personality to be a wrestler?
Boy, I tell you, I've seen a lot of different personalities going through wrestling. It has to be a self-motivated person, a person that has a lot of pride in himself, and somebody that is very disciplined, that can handle the discipline of wrestling.
It takes someone that really has inner drive, then, something you can't measure.
Yeah. Yes, yes. You know, you can come with some of these other ones, but they're not big-time winners. They'll be the small winners. But when you get into, I'm talking state tournaments and national tournaments, and somebody like G.T. Taylor. Now, we have G.T. Taylor at Arizona State University right now. I mean, there was probably one of my best wrestlers ever to come out of Southview, and he's ranked in the country. Matter of fact, he's an All-American last year, and he's ranked number 4 in the country this year. And you know, people like that to go on and excel at that level of competition, it takes that type of person to be a big winner.
I imagine after 21 years at the top post, you can really look back with a lot of pride at some of the wrestlers that have gone through.
Yeah, you know, everybody says, "Oh, Ternes, you're a pretty good coach." Yeah, I am, but yet I've had some outstanding individuals to work with, some outstanding students coming through the South Lorraine area, and I've had some outstanding assistant coaches. My brother, I don't know if I could have attained the things that we have done without my brother. My brother and I, we go hand in hand. You know, when you talk about Southview wrestling, everybody says, "Oh, head coach Dan Ternes," but yet, you know, he doesn't get enough praise. Tom is younger than me, and he works his fanny off. I mean, he's just an excellent coach. He would be a fantastic head coach somewhere.
Dan, do you find in wrestling that you get more hands-on, one-on-one teaching with your kids, where in other sports there's so many guys out on the field or whatever the case may be, you don't get that one-on-one experience?
Yeah, we have a lot of one-on-one where I coach. What I usually do is I coach for the whole team, and then we break off into small groups and we go one-on-one. And of course, like I say, if my brother has problems with one kid, I take that kid. Or if he's having a problem, or I'm having a problem, he takes him. And we kind of break things down that way. But it is all one-on-one, really, when you break it all down.
Any particular weight class that's perhaps easier to coach than another weight class? Do you use different techniques for the different weights?
There's different techniques from 1-3 all the way up to heavyweight. A heavyweight does not wrestle like a 103-pounder. Totally different. And what I try to do is I try to get a small coach in to coach the lightweights, and my brother normally coaches the middleweights, and then I try coaching the heavier weights, because they are different moves for different sizes.
I always thought that was one of the neat things about wrestling, is that no matter what your size, no matter what your weight, you can go out and you can excel in athletics.
Yeah, you can.
And that's probably one of the selling points you use.
That's one of the selling points in the South Lorraine when we get so many Hispanics, the lightweights, where we are known traditionally for the lightweights, 103s, 112s, 119s. Those have been my mainstay as far as our toughness. Although this year it's a little bit different this year than with the past few years. Now people look at us for the upper weights, because I'm loaded in the upper weights.
I imagine with young men that are only 103 or whatever the weight may be, suddenly their self-confidence can blossom as well.
Correct. You know, there's how many other sports can they excel in and have just as much notoriety as, you know, in wrestling at 103 pounds versus most of them can't play football because they are so small. And like I said, we're up into the big weights now, though.
Well, let's bring in one of your wrestlers, Juggy Franklin. Talk a little bit about Juggy, introduce him here, and what he's done for your wrestling program.
Juggy's only a 10th grader. He's one of the babies of the class here. He started out, he wrestled varsity for us last year. He was undefeated all the way through junior high, and he come right into our varsity program last year. I wasn't sure if he could cut it as the varsity program, but lo and behold, he ended up with a 23-8 record. He went to the district tournament. He was a 140-pounder last year, and he's on the weights. He's lifting over at All-American Gym, lifting now and getting so much bigger and stronger. And he is up to 152 this year.
All right, Juggy, I said I was going to ask you. Now, where do you get that nickname, Juggy Franklin?
I got it from my Uncle Curtis when I was 6 years old. He said I was big-headed, so he just started calling me Juggy.
Because of the big head, all right. Talk a little bit about wrestling. Why do you enjoy wrestling?
Because it's a fun sport. I like a hard sport, not no soft sport like tennis. I like the aggressiveness. Yeah, I just really like it a lot.
And it's something you've done since junior high school?
Yep, I used to be a water boy when I was like 6 years old. I remember I used to chase the buses down.
Now, I'll tell you a story about Juggy. We had a full bus, full vans and things. I said, Juggy, you can't go with us. This is the Brunswick tournament a few years back when he was probably like 6 years old, 7 years old. I said, Juggy, I can't take you this week. You just don't have room for you. Lo and behold, I get down to Brunswick. Here's Juggy. He jumped in the back of the van, hid behind the seat. Everybody covered him up with things. There's my water boy down there. That's back when he's 6, 7 years old.
Well, so, you knew the inner drive he had at that point, right, Dan?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about the coach. Let's put him on the spot. What makes this guy such a special coach?
He's just a lovable guy. He loves a lot of kids. He can put up with us. I don't know why, but.
We talked a little bit about individual and how wrestling is different from football. I know you play football, and the fact that you get out there in the mat and it's just you and your opponent. Do you get a self-pride feeling from that?
Yeah.
Any particular reason why? Just the fact that it's you and the opponent?
Yeah, you only can lose by yourself.
You know, that's probably Juggy's strong point. We kind of gauge what type of competition they're wrestling. And this past weekend, he wrestled kind of a poor kid, and all of a sudden, Juggy didn't look very good. Then he wrestled a kid that was in the Virginia state finals, and he beat the kid 2-1. He really looked sharp. Then he wrestled another kid from Pennsylvania. It was a state placer. He looked better yet. So the competition that he wrestles against, he seems to go right with the flow. However tough they are, that's how much tougher he is. So
you wrestle to the level of your competition,
yeah.
Then.
Yep.
I want to ask you about wrestling at Southview. Of course, it's a very successful program. Maybe I don't want to use the word pressure, but do you feel as though you're representing Southview and it's successful and you want to go out and really prove to people that this is one of the premier programs in Ohio?
Yes, I do, because when you hear the name of Southview, it intimidates people. You know, you'd be like, oh, you wrestling Southview. Just give the person chills when you wrestling Southview.
So it's a feeling where maybe you feel you're almost better as soon as you get on the mat, almost self-confidence.
Yeah, I do.
You get that amongst your kids, Dan?
Definitely. Definitely. You know, a lot of people look at St. Ed's that way.
Very true.
Southview doesn't, you know, we don't wrestle them during the year. We wrestle them at one time in a sectional tournament. And you hear high school kids, as soon as you hear St. Ed's, boom, they start shaking. My kids are not intimidated by them. And I feel as though a lot of people that we wrestle, we're 2 or 3 points better than them before we even step on the mat. And I think my kids feel that way too.
It's almost the way people used to feel about Admiral King basketball. Once you stepped on the floor with them, you were down 10 points.
Right, that's correct. Absolutely.
Juggy, how'd you enjoy the tournament in Pennsylvania?
I enjoyed it a lot. Gave me a lot of confidence I can beat anybody from anywhere.
We were talking earlier, I'm sure you heard us, that that's a great experience for you. Some of the things you learned from it.
Well, we the most aggressive teams on our feet, but when they get you on the ground, they just like pound you if you stay on the ground. So most likely you want to be on your feet in Pennsylvania.
Juggy, what are your goals for the year?
Well, my goal is to go for state championship.
Hey, why shoot for anything less, right?
That's right, why not?
Is that basically what you preach to your kids, Dan?
That's absolutely. We go individual first, and then the team will follow, depending on how the individuals do, and then we'll say team is next. But when it comes down to state tournament, that is their ultimate goal when they come out for wrestling. Be a state champ or be a state placer, and then you set them back from there.
Juggy, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we'll be keeping tabs on your season as we go along here. Best of luck throughout the rest of the campaign.
Thanks a lot.
And now, through the magic of television, coming up next will be Orlando Mendoza, another member of the Southview wrestling team. Okay, well now we've got Orlando Mendoza up here, and as we did with Juggy, let's have Dan Ternes talk a little bit about Orlando, some of the things he's done for the program, and give him a brief introduction.
Yeah, this is my 189-pounder. He's been at that weight class for the last 2-3 years now. One of the big strong boys in the area, probably one of the top 189s in northeastern Ohio. He's 9-2 at the present time. He placed 4th in the California Invitational Tournament.
Orlando, I'll ask you some of the same questions I asked Juggy. First of all, what sparked your interest in wrestling?
Well, my brother used to wrestle in Whittier, and that's why I started wrestling. I wasn't really interested in wrestling until my brother, gave me the idea about wrestling and telling me that only the tough kids wrestle, and basketball's for, the people that can't hack wrestling. So that sparked my interest in wrestling.
Boy, wait till we have Larry Stark on this show. I don't know. Did he used to practice a few moves on you at the house?
Nah, he was interested in wrestling for a while, but then I took over my own drive in wrestling.
Talk a little bit about how you feel when you're out on that mat going one-on-one. We talked with Juggy about the fact that it's individual, it's you against your opponent. It has to be a great feeling of self-pride. Do you agree?
Yes, I feel when I step on the mat this year more than ever, I feel more confident that that person was going to have the hardest time of any wrestling anybody he has wrestled with me, because I feel that I can go strength to strength with just about anybody in the state, and plus wrestling at Southview, that just shows that I have my ability in wrestling is improved just for wrestling at Southview.
Orlando, how did you fare in the tournament in Pennsylvania?
Well, I took 4th at the tournament. The first day I won all my 3 matches, and then the second day I was wrestling the first seeded kid there, and I got caught and things happened. And, you learn a lot when you get beat, especially on your own mistakes. So I learned a lot going down there, and I learned what to do and what not to do next time I wrestle someone who is pretty tough in that weight class.
Coach, have you seen Orlando really develop in his years at Southview?
This year more than ever. He's an individual that he was out for wrestling, just being part of it through the years. And then all of a sudden last year he started to take a little bit more interest. And then this year he has really blossomed, where he really loves the sport, and he really is self-confident this year that he's going to do well. So he's really taken off this year more than ever.
Orlando, what do you do to get ready for the wrestling campaign? Obviously, referring to other sports, football, you get out there and you can throw the football around, or baseball, practice your batting, or whatever the case may be. What about wrestling? What do you do to get ready?
Well, wrestling is, if you want to be competitive in wrestling, it's really an all-around, all-year sport. With the off-season training, I've been being trained by Vince Villanucci at All-American for the past summer and for football, and it's helped me tremendously in my physical condition and my strength. And so there's dedication in wrestling in which you have to put a little more than, put a lot extra if you want to get anything out of wrestling. So many kids that go out for wrestling and they think that it's just for as many months as wrestling is, they might not be as successful as kids that put an extra in on the off season.
Dan, has that always been the case? Or have you seen that really come on over the past few years? It used to be sports were just their particular season, but now every sport's a year-long sport.
Yeah, they're specializing now. I'm not sure if I completely agree with it, but for the kids that are going to be champions, the kids that are going to be 1 or 2 in the state, they almost have to go almost year-round now. But most of my guys are playing football, or they are active in other sports. I do not push it year-round anymore. I used to years ago, but I don't anymore.
Orlando, is it as tough as you thought it was going to be, or easier?
Well, I pushed myself a lot harder this year than I have. I knew the Southview. I've known how the practice goes and everything, because I've been up there since I was a freshman. And it depends on how much you put into it, on how tough it's going to be. You can go up there and just mess around, and it'll be easy. But if you want to be a top wrestler, you have to really push yourself, and that's where the toughness comes in.
Orlando, I have a hard time believing this guy in the middle is just going to let you get up there and mess around. I don't know. 21 years, one of the most successful programs.
I tell you what, we play a lot. We play a lot.
You have to make it fun, though.
We play tag, we play football up there, we play basketball up there, along with all the wrestling.
Just to break up the monotony?
We play chicken fights, we tackle. So you ought to go to my practices sometime.
I'm going to definitely stop in and watch one now.
Unbelievable.
Orlando, how about the Southview pride that Juggy talked about? Is it there for you as well?
Well, yes. You feel you have a responsibility as a Southview wrestler on the varsity level to be a success and be a winner, to hold up the tradition. Everybody expects you to be a winner at Southview if you wrestle.
And obviously, these young men walk around with that pride, Dan, no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Is that something that you instill in them from day one, whether they walk in as a freshman or even if you see them down in the 7th and 8th grade?
You know, I think it's cast it off from the other wrestlers that have gone through the program that, hey, you are expected to do this, you are expected to do that. And it's just built through the program.
Orlando, do you enjoy wrestling at the heavier weight?
Yes, I enjoy it. I don't have to cut weight as much as a lighter weight. I don't have a hard time making weight, and I feel much stronger.
And that's something that's simply developed as the years have gone on.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about what sparked your interest in wrestling. You mentioned the fact that your brother, and you sort of got some friendly advice from him, but is it something that you've always wanted to do?
Well, I never knew about wrestling until I got to Whittier. I never knew what wrestling was, you know. We did something a little bit in gym class. But then in the 8th grade, that's when I finally started. I got part of the team. I was on the first string, and I was very successful in Whittier, and that put a drive into me that this is something that'll help me out.
Orlando, do you wish it got more coverage or more publicity, per se? We were talking before about glamour sports, you know, football and basketball and so on. Do you wish that wrestling was right up there with those other sports?
Well, yes, like in Pennsylvania, it was like a tremendous experience to see how much more they are into the wrestling and following the kids along. And, you know, although Southview is known as a wrestling school, there isn't that much publicity about it. Although, you know, if you don't know about wrestling, then you ain't going to know about certain aspects of wrestling at certain schools. And I think that hopefully in time that'll improve.
Dan, you think that's the feeling overall, that either you're a wrestling fan or you're not? There are very few people that you're really going to convert into a wrestling fan.
You know, I think if you can get a person to a match 2 or 3 times, then all of a sudden they start seeing moves take place and seeing how the scoring goes. A lot of people will not give it that chance. They'll go one time and say, "Ooh, it looks too rough, it looks too tough." But you know, we need, if the parents that are involved, they have gone through it with their boys, and they can see the next move coming, and they really push for it. And I think the student body itself, now we do have pretty good support, but not as much as what we really would like to have.
Get out there and see the Southview wrestling program. It's certainly something to be proud of. Dan, I've enjoyed our talk, and I've enjoyed chatting with your athletes as well. It's been a pleasure, and boy, keep up the good work over there at Southview. Many thanks.
Thank you.
Many thanks to Dan Ternes, Orlando Mendoza, and Juggy Franklin, a nickname that will live in infamy here in the Lorain area. And of course, our thanks to you for tuning in to this week's edition of Sports Scene. Be with us again next week on WLCS. So long, everybody.
This is Lorain City Schools Television, WLCS TV 36.